Thank you, Debjani. It's really a pleasure to be with this highly energetic crowd, which I know.
So we're going to do a rapid fire discussion, right? KK, we talked about, you heard them.
Yes.
You heard them. We have to change something in India. We have to grow this mindset of deep tech investing. You are doing it. You are doing it brilliantly. How do we make this, how do we scale this in India?
See, I must be honest, when I started 3 years back, I had the mindset of what we had in the IT industry over the last 30 years. We looked at it with a lens of just hardware and software. But when I look at the deep tech space, I think the opportunities are really humongous. And what I keep telling my team is the Indian IT industry became 300 billion over 30 years. And I think there's a real opportunity for deep tech based startups to create another $300 billion industry in the next 10 years.
Absolutely.
I think one aspect which you're all missing is that I think it was a great business to build and really acknowledge India as a place where there's deep technology talent, but we were really addressing only 1% budget of enterprises. But today, having seen the 3 deep tech or 4 deep tech startups which are there, what we should realize is that we are addressing a much broader market. In fact, we see deep techs addressing what the CMO budget is. We see many deep techs today addressing the budgets of the chief sustainability officer. So to me, I think creating another $300 billion industry in 10 years is absolutely feasible. And I think we need to start working on it. And will the tech industry of India in the next 10 years create a $1 trillion industry? I think it will certainly happen. Now, it's just that we have to execute, and many times we keep saying, oh, we don't have this, we don't have that, and so on. But to me, I think we have a lot of what I would call tailwinds which are there for the industry to really deliver on this market opportunity.
Talk a little bit about some of the key tailwinds that you see.
See, the key tailwinds which I see is, first of all, I think the big advantage in India is that we don't have any of the legacy technologies.
Yeah.
Just like we sort of skipped the wired communication to move on to mobile, I think there are great opportunities. And I was so happy to see Jay do the thing on agricultural spraying. Because what I do believe in deep tech is that it's not just hardware and software. Many times it's multidisciplinary in nature. So to that extent, there's no one country which has a very specific advantage. People keep talking about US and China being well ahead on AI. But if you look at the real capacity which we have in terms of people who can deliver on that technology, we probably have the best advantage. The second key tailwind which I see is there are clearly problems which are needed to be solved in India, which itself gives you a great market. I know when we were discussing about this, you said, what are the learnings you've had from deep tech investing? One of the key learnings which I had is not to be impatient on growth. Because I think really when you get into the VC space, you always think in terms of growing every year 100% plus and sort of trying to exit to the next round. So I think technology adoption in the deep tech space takes time.
Yeah.
The second learning which I had is there's really nothing which is like a product market fit. The PMF happens over a period of time.
Yeah.
So some of the tailwinds which are happening is there are real problems to be solved in India, which you can then really use to build your solution. And then really look at a global market. And there's enough scale in India. Just like Jai has done for agricultural spraying, at Mela Ventures, we were the first to invest in an agricultural drone spraying company. Because we clearly saw that had a social impact. Because when we looked at data on lung diseases in rural India, almost 7.5 lakh of people had lung diseases because they were just sort of absorbing the chemicals. And the efficacy of manual spraying was less than 10%. So the business case for it is very, very easy to prove. What we did was we changed the business model to really create demand through the input providers, which are really the agri input providers, and then the government has really been helpful thanks to policy advocacy by organizations like Nasscom. Today, the government is really behind ensuring that we use more efficient means. So the tailwind that there are problems to be solved in India is really a great opportunity.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. You talked about government briefly in this case, but what should be the role? Should Indian government play a bigger role? You know, like US has these organizations, be it DARPA, etc., to really encourage that deep ecosystem in their specific areas, be it defense or whatever. Do we need a similar approach in India?
See, I think rather than the US sort of approach, I'm more aligned to the approach of what Israel followed. Israel really gave a grant to anybody who has a great idea. You experiment that grant, and if it doesn't work, then you can go back to your job. Because I think innovation will happen when you sort of support people in navigating through that risk. I think the government needs to play a role like that. And again, being a resource-constrained economy, I would think private capital also needs to come into that. To me, what I would advocate as something which I would anticipate the government to do is that can you encourage private capital to start a lot of incubators which just focuses on very narrow niches, like treating highly polluting industrial waste? And can there be an incubator for that? Because that's again a multidisciplinary sort of thing. Yes, there is sensor technology involved, there is data science involved, there is material science involved, there's nanotechnology involved. So I would think the role of government is to encourage what I call narrow niche incubators and potentially through the CSR program ask companies to do whatever support they can. So I would not sort of rely on the thing saying, hey, the government hasn't done it. But I think every private enterprise can start something where they believe they can deliver an impact. Make it easy for innovators to try out their idea. And if it doesn't work, they probably go back without any implication.
You know, you are also a big advocate for domestic capital. I am too. I strongly believe India needs that. It's not either or. It's and, but India must have also strong domestic capital. What do you think, what holds us back, and what do you think needs to change in order to get, there's so many high net worth individuals in India, to get them interested to invest in this area?
No, I think the understanding of this asset class, because everybody realizes that it's risk capital, but when you start looking at deep tech and investments, beyond just being a risk capital, the timeline for exits certainly needs to be longer. Like at Mela Ventures, we don't look at, even though we invest early stage, we don't look at an exit in 2-3 years. We clearly think for a deep tech company to get to some scale, it's at least a 6 to 8 year period. So essentially funds need to start thinking in terms of a life cycle of 10 to 12 years so that they can really support these companies at the stage when they're scaling. The second key element is really educating people in terms of really putting a part of their total overall portfolio into this asset class. And again, here no government resources are really required. And what I think many may not be aware of is there are government organizations which are starting to put in risk capital into venture funds. Like SIDBI is a great example. They run an excellent fund of fund programs, very responsive, though it's a government organization, they really function like a private enterprise. But we need many more like that. And lastly, I think there's a lot of what I call idle capital really with the insurance companies, with the pension authority and so on. Today, I think because of regulatory restrictions, they are not allowed to invest in some of these risky asset classes. But to me, rather than trying to make it a budget allocation, can the government change the regulatory environment to allow pension funds to even invest 5% of their overall assets under management into funds? Insurance companies can be allowed to give that leeway. And that will significantly expand. Because I think, again, the approach which we are taking is there are enough of problems which are India specific, which needs a real deep tech approach to solve them. And with domestic capital, I think that whole process can get significantly accelerated.
Brilliant, brilliant suggestions, and can have a huge, I mean, just opening up the insurance sector, 5%
Yes.
can have such a big impact on India. KK is one guy, you know, I love talking to him about what he's working on, because when he's working on something new, his eyes start, you know, they all go bright, and you know, the passion really shows. So what are some of these new things that's really exciting you right now, KK?
See, I think the opportunities in the sustainability climate tech space, I think is really huge. One of the recent things which we took up, because if you look at everybody complains in terms of our water bodies getting polluted. And then people say, hey, it happens because people, manufacturing units allow their industrial effluents to go into this. Many of these industries, which are particularly small and medium enterprises, have used either chemical technology or material technology to try and adopt that. But that never works to the performance levels which you need. So we are investing in a company which is started by two young entrepreneurs who have really built a sensor software-based technology to real-time assess using a process of what is called electrolyzation, which is almost like a real-time reactor, which makes any strong industrial pollutant not potable water, but water which can be released into the water bodies. But if you look at the underlying sort of technologies which drives that, it has chemical technology, it has material technology, it has a lot of hardware sensor technologies, it has a real-time monitoring solution, it has software. And it's affordable. Because one key thing I keep telling my entrepreneurs is, I think you have to innovate in the Indian context, but if that innovation is going to be 2 times the price of what currently people are using, that innovation will really not catch on, because Indian consumers are very value sensitive. So our benchmark is that it just has to be 20% at best costlier than the current solution. Now, so the whole area of sustainability, I think, is a great opportunity. Similarly, we are investing in a company which is creating eco-friendly cooling solutions compared to when you move perishable goods across India. Companies use what are called reefer trucks, which are refrigerated trucks, and they emit so much of GHG gases that partly leads to the sort of environmental issues we have in Delhi and other cities. So there is a need to reduce wastage, but at the same time it has to be done on an eco-friendly basis. So this is a research project which came out of IIT Bombay, the Sign, using phase change materials and newer technologies. They built an entirely eco-friendly cooling system for transporting perishables. The fact is the adoption is probably going to take 6-7 years, but honestly, we are going to sort of see it through to a stage where it gets mainstream adopted.
This is all fantastic. I mean, it's like everything you touch has the potential to turn into gold in this area, right?
Yeah.
All you need is that bit of passion, the bit of patience, I mean, everything to come together. So last question, I know we're running out of time, PKK, but last question to you. If there is one advice you could give the young deep tech entrepreneurs in the room and outside the room who have these really good ideas, they are capable, they can make it happen, but they are struggling today to find the right support, what's that advice you would like to give them?
See, one is clearly, I think this is a difficult game. Unlike when we moved in from services to what I call as a SaaS industry, there was a market which was available. A Freshworks really was a solution available to the small and medium enterprises who can't afford a sales force. So there's a market which is available. But really in the deep tech, to establish that customer need is going to take time. So you have to be patient in terms of doing it. What I would certainly see is, I think you follow a structured way in terms of how you're going to get to, and I would certainly encourage and work in terms of creating an ecosystem where people get risk-free grants to try out their ideas, which could be 12 months, 18 months, it could be maybe a 2 crore sort of grant to try out the thing. And once you commercialize it, create a set of angel investors who are interested in that space to give you the initial capital. So try and, it's a marathon. It's not a 100 meters dash. You need to be patient at each stage, and the ecosystem will certainly keep building. Don't give up hope, because I think this is the biggest opportunity we have over the next 10 years. And all of us need to be patient, and it will happen. I have no doubts that this will not happen.
Amen. I hope, I know they say something in Hindi which I'm completely forgetting, but I'll turn it into English and say, hot chocolate fudge, sugar or whatever it is they say, for those words. Fantastic, KK. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for being such a great supporter of the ecosystem.
Absolutely. Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Kritika, hand over to you.